Hi, everyone. Welcome to Warden Tech Talks. My name is Chris Ferrer, and I'm your host. And today we're joined by Chris Bess. He is the co-founder and CEO of Substack, a subscription platform for independent writers. Chris founded the company in 2017 to help create a better future for writing by letting writers own their work and their relationships with their audience. Before Substack, Chris was the co-founder and CTO of the mobile app Kick. From 2009 to 2017, Chris helped scale Kick and build a product used by over 300 million users. Chris is a graduate from the University of Waterloo and is based in San Francisco. Hey, Chris, thanks so much for coming and joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So to kind of kick it off, Substack is an exciting platform and now a mobile app helping writers generate subscriptions through newsletters sent directly to subscribers rather than, say, depending on advertising or listicles. And writers are empowered to create content that uniquely resonates with their subscribers. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you see the writer/creator economy kind of evolving these days and what trends you're seeing today that excite you.
Cool. Yeah, my broad theory on this is that we're in the transition to the thing that comes after the attention economy. So there's this first generation of the internet that was kind of an attention land grab, where all of a sudden we had these devices, first our computers, then our phones, that could kind of like keep us entertained and give us information and delightful things at all hours, anytime. We could fill any amount of time we want. And the natural things that won in that first era, that first phase, were things that were kind of like free and cheaply compelling, right? Things that were like, here's something for free that will entertain you. And we've now reached saturation on that. Like, you're never bored. You always have something you can do. You always have something you can look at. And the next frontier is to spend your time and attention, not just spend it, but spend it well, spend it wisely. Your time is literally your life. And so if you're using it on something that's kind of like a free distraction at some point, that ends up not actually being a good deal. And the business models that won that first phase of attention on the internet couldn't really value quality because they're based on time. They're based on, aggregating a bunch of attention and time to like sell to advertisers. Because it's targeted, that attention is kind of like all equally valuable. It doesn't matter if it's like, the best essay you've ever read or like a 9-hour cat video, like those are the same. Those are like time is a time is a time. And so the trend that I think is most exciting is a new ability to value quality, a new ability to value deep relationships, trusted relationships. As a reader on Substack, I can choose for myself who to invest my trust with, who to spend my attention on, who to support, what kind of work I want to help bring into the world. And as a writer, as a culture maker, my incentives are to earn and keep the trust of an audience of people who deeply value the work I'm doing. And that's just like fundamentally different than trying to get a lot of clicks.
That makes a lot of sense. It's really exciting, right, to see that kind of richness. I mean, it was nice with the ubiquity of content and having access to things like Wikipedia that, just made life so much easier when you're just looking something up randomly. But the kind of new kind of focus on it, like intentionality and really having more choice in finding high quality content that resonates with you is super exciting. I'm curious, how you think about how people kind of curate that experience and how apps like Substack kind of help with that.
Totally. Wikipedia, by the way, is a rare exception of something that is actually very good. And it's telling that it's a nonprofit to create something that is that good in the sort of first phase of internet. How do you curate this? So I'm talking about quality here. Like, hey, how do you invest your time and attention and mind into things that you value and are good? Well, who judges that? What is quality? How do you decide what's quality? And I think there's lots of ways you can approach that question, but our answer to it is you decide. Right? We are not here to be the arbiters of like, hey, this is good, this is bad. I think the right way to do curation in this world is to put the writers and the readers in charge, right? The writers, the culture makers, being able to do the work they believe in, do the work they think is valuable, be accountable to the value they're bringing to their audience. That's like an important part of the curation. And then for the readers, getting to choose as their best selves who to subscribe to, who to pay for, who to spend their time with, not make the choice as their worst self, kind of like doing one more little scroll before you go to bed, but sit back on a Sunday and say, who do I want to be spending my intellectual life with? I'm going to make that decision consciously. And that's the kind of, those two halves of curation are how you get something new and better.
I love that. And, it's one of the things I've seen on Substack and like some of the newsletters that I subscribe to. I'm always, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but always wowed by how incredible the quality of content that you find. From niche things to like a newsletter that I follow, like Le Digestif about cooking. And, you just get such a wide variety of really incredible high quality content that you feel like isn't an advertisement, but has hard-hitting journalism to, new unique stories that you wouldn't find anywhere else. And so it's so exciting to kind of, stumble on so many incredible newsletters that are out there today, and people, like you said, that are kind of creating culture, that are kind of defining a new generation as we go forward. And so on the kind of creator front, I'm curious, kind of in your early days of Substack, how you kind of got over this cold start problem of helping people kind of shift their perspective from working, say, for a publication, or, maybe just kind of working on a blog and thinking of themselves as an entrepreneur and having, direct access to their subscribers. So yeah, I'm kind of curious about that beginning stage.
Yeah. So one of the nice things about Substack is that with anything like this, you kind of want, people call it like a single player mode, or like a mode that works with like without having to like have some big scale. This is the cold start problem. And the cool thing about Substack is as soon as there was one writer, like it worked. It made a lot of sense, right? We didn't need to get some large number of writers in order for it to be valuable. As soon as we had one writer who had a bunch of readers who cared deeply about that thing that he was writing and wanted to read it and wanted to pay for it, that was actually enough. That was a minimum viable thing, right? Like it was enough to like work with and learn and start to build and like build out the things. And part of what was good was like, there were a few people out there that already really wanted Substack or something like it. There was people that were looking at people that were doing paid email newsletters and saying, I want to do that, but I can't figure out how to like tie all these little bits of technology together to like make the experience good. And even if I could spend the time doing that, I don't necessarily want to. I want to spend my time on the work that I think is valuable. And so there's people out there that had email newsletters that people deeply valued. And not only were they not getting paid for it, but they were paying for the privilege of sending out the email newsletters. And so our pitch to some of these early folks was like, hey, how about instead of paying for the privilege of doing this super valuable thing, A, we make it free, and then B, you'll get paid. And like, you can do this thing that you've been wanting to do. And so, there wasn't a tremendous number of those people, but there was enough to kind of like get from 0 to 1 and to find the place where it was starting to work. And we're actually tremendously indebted to some of those early writers, as we are to all writers on the platform, for kind of like working with us in that first phase.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense, the value proposition of, especially for folks who are paying, right, to send out a bunch of emails to their loyal audience and then, have, I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say one funny example of this was there was this wonderful service called Tiny Letter that was like a really like a dead simple newsletter service beloved by writers for good reason. It was really nice. And it got bought by a email marketing provider thing, and they put a cap on the number of things. They're like, hey, you can do up to 5,000 or some number of things for free in Tiny Letter, this product you love. And then you have to switch to our giant marketing, very complicated product with all of these features that marketers need, and you have to pay for it. And we were like, and the writers were like, just let me do the simple thing and not pay for it. And Substack could kind of like find those folks who were not the real customers of that business. Writers are not the customers of like an email marketing business. That doesn't make sense. And that potential energy helped get things going.
I definitely don't miss my days of working in enterprise email marketing products. They're complicated.
Email sucks.
It really sucks. But no, that's such a great example of folks really loving, right, this dead simple tool to enable them to do, a very important piece, through distribution, but, it allows them more time and less headache to focus on the content, right, and their subscribers rather than what's their tech stack. And so it's wonderful to have, right, like an all-in-one platform that's dead simple and allows them to focus. It's so funny, when you were kind of mentioning, it was so surprising that there was nothing like Substack, right? People wanted it. And it's always interesting that there's those products that you hear about that come out and you're like, nothing like this existed? That's so strange. But it's also it shows how powerful these tools are. And so, on the kind of, creator side and seeing this growth and empowerment of writers, I'm curious how, I know Substack has, I think it was Substack Pro was kind of a training course to help, writers kind of grow and get the know-how of how to kind of grow their newsletter. I'm curious how you've kind of thought about helping writers grow on the platform, grow as their publications grow, and think about how they can grow their audience?
Yeah. The approach we've always taken is spend an inordinate amount of effort getting a few folks to come to Substack and then be very successful, right? Like build with folks and be like, we're not just trying to get you to come on. This is part of like Substack. The way we charge is germane to this, which is it's free to use Substack and to publish to as many people as you want. And then once you start charging, we only get paid when you get paid and we take a percentage. And so our incentives with writers are like, okay, let's make you as much money as we can make you, because this is also sort of our business. And so we would work directly with folks to build the things they need, not only like the tools they need, but the things that actually help them succeed. So all of the little things about like making the sign up really easy and making the sharing really good and working on all of the different like flows of how people discover the thing and like, making all of those tools work really well. And then we kind of build that knowledge into the platform. And so every writer who signs up, and we have podcasting and other, community stuff now, everyone who signs up gets kind of the benefit of all of that learning across all of the different things. That's really the magic, I think.
Yeah, and that is really magical. And one of the features, kind of the product nerd in me, is, read before you subscribe. And it's just such a simple seeming feature, but it's so powerful in kind of giving me a look into the content that they're creating and like kind of hooks me and sells me. I'm like, oh, I definitely need to put my email in there. And it's just like, a really cool feature that you all have created. And it's interesting to think about, right, that growth with creators and partnership, right? If they do well, you do well. And I think that's such a powerful model, unlike many other platforms you see today. On the, helping writers kickstart and kind of, change maybe their perspective on what their job might have looked like in the past, I'm curious about like Substack Grow. It seems like a really cool opportunity for folks who are ready to take the leap, but maybe a little unsure of how they might be able to do it. And it reminds me of, I think you're seeing more and more platforms that are coming out that are trying to say fund or there's small business loans, but I think very different in kind of, again, that partnership model and giving creators the tools to be successful on a platform that helps them distribute.
We think of our job as Substack to kind of give you everything you need to go independent and be successful. And some of that is software. Some of that is a platform that has all of this knowledge baked in. Some of it isn't. And some of the stuff like Substack Grow and some of the programs we run are about kind of like building the knowledge that you need and building the sense of community and having other writers as reference, kind of like knowing what you need to know to make the thing go is another piece that's really important. It's not just software. It's kind of the whole thing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, right? There's learning, there's, growth, and there's so many other things in addition to kind of the technology tools. And but maybe focusing again on the other technology tools, I'm curious, with the launch of the mobile app, how you all were kind of thinking that, and right, this is again another tool to really ensure that creators have what they need, right, to be in front of consumers and subscribers like myself and give them kind of a easy experience on my phone wherever I'm going. I have the latest newsletters that I love and I can see them together. And so I'm curious, how you all kind of decided on that and what you're excited, I think, about going forward with the app.
Yeah, it's almost something that we sort of had in our minds. The magic of Substack is the direct relationship between readers and writers, right? You don't subscribe to Substack, you subscribe to someone. And that is the like fundamental atomic unit. And email is actually really good and magical for that. Like it was sort of like, it's the one place where you could reach, when we started Substack, it was the one place where you could reach an audience and not be intermediated by kind of like one of these attention monster algorithms, right? You have followers on Twitter, but you can't really reach them. You have people on Facebook, you can't really reach them. And email was kind of this, one of the last places where people could like opt in to have a relationship with you. And then you had a relationship where like they could send you stuff and you could get it. And so that's why email is so good. And the idea with the app is like, it's basically the same as email. It's like the first screen of the app is inbox. It works exactly the same way. The idea is to kind of like upgrade that connection. And so now, you don't have to, like as a writer, you don't have to be reaching out to people in between their promotion folder and other things. You kind of have this upgraded connection, which is just like better delivery. We can do more interesting and richer things there. A lot of like the community stuff, the multimedia stuff can be really good. And it kind of is just like an all around sort of upgrade to that direct connection.
I definitely see that upgrade to the direct connection, and it's exciting to see, right? Like you said, multimedia, and then also one thing I've really enjoyed is kind of the discovery area where there's so many incredible newsletters out there that I feel like I'm missing. I feel like I have FOMO for all these incredible writers out there that I'm missing, and so it's been so nice to look at like the technology section or crypto and be able to discover these rich and insightful creators that I might not have ever heard from before. And so I'm curious, how this kind of goes back to the earlier question, you all think of discovery. I guess maybe it, again, it's just kind of putting the content out there so that folks can make their own decisions, right? They can curate for themselves what they find is valuable, what they're excited about, and just give them that opportunity.
Yeah, we think discovery is one of the most valuable things we can offer, right? Like, if I've got a Substack and I've got this loyal audience of people that value what I make and they're paying me and I've got something that like is deeply valuable, if more people can find and fall in love with this thing that I'm doing, that's like a good thing. And that's like a value that I can get that helps me grow. It helps me make this thing. It's sort of like, and it's a win for the reader as well, where it's like, hey, I found something that I value and care about. And the thing that we try to be really thoughtful about with Substack is doing the discovery in a way that preserves that fundamental principle that the readers and the writers are in charge, right? Like the way that it works is not like, hey, we've like crunch some numbers and we think this is the thing you're most likely to click on after, whatever. We try to like make sure that the best way to surface stuff is based on human relationships that you already have. So the best way to find a new Substack is by, a writer that you already follow recommending it, or the community that you've already become a part of and grown to trust surfacing it to you. Like that's kind of the best way. And then outside of that, if you're just kind of like coming in fresh and being like, all right, what's here and what should I look at? Kind of just giving a good kind of like index fund look at like, you can search for things, you can see the top stuff. Here's kind of like a way that you can find kind of your first node on this trust graph, which you can then follow everywhere else you need to go.
I love that. I think it's definitely like a contrarian view, right? Like you kind of mentioned with the attention economy, you see these mega algorithms that many times make it really hard for people to break through, right? There's so much content out there, you become just another piece of content, but preserving that relationship for creators and helping subscribers find, what resonates with them. And at the same time, if you're new, helping you kind of dip your toes in quickly and find things that are going to resonate with you. But I think it's a really, thoughtful way to kind of move away to some extent from kind of, these monster algorithms that feel like they're many times eating the world and kind of dictating what you do and what you see. Thinking about, I guess, COVID, I'd love to hear, how you've seen COVID kind of changing, whether it's writers or readers. I know one of the things that I've been seeing is that people are reading more than ever, as they've been kind of stuck at home. But I think, right, people are kind of getting into that habit. And so even as, COVID lets up a little bit, fingers crossed, people, right, are still kind of preserving that habit of reading and having that kind of downtime to explore. And so I'm curious, what you kind of seen going on at Substack.
Yeah, I think that, COVID has been a huge change to many people's lives. And sort of we went through this very intense period that kind of like people started living a lot more of their lives digitally. And I think as you see that tapering off, ideally some of that does go away, right? Like it's good to go back into the real world and live real lives. And I think you'll see some of that kind of changing back to the way things were before, but not completely, right? I think this thing you point at is like some of the changes that happened will stick, right? I don't think that the way that everyone works will be exactly the same as it was before. I don't think that the way that everyone reads and consumes culture and lives their life online will go back to being exactly the way that it was before. I think some of this stuff has kind of like opened up new space of possibility and new habits and ideas for people. And, some of those things people can't wait to get rid of, but some of them are like, hey, this is pretty good. Reading Substack is definitely in the latter camp.
Definitely. Yeah, I know it's exciting to see, how people are, kind of making that conscious choice between, okay, here's my life in COVID, here's my life post-COVID. A lot of things I'm really excited to get rid of, but a lot of things that are actually kind of new and exciting that you want to hold on to as you go forward in your life, hopefully again, post-COVID. On that, I guess I'm curious, what you might be seeing for writers. Are you seeing more people are kind of taking the time to dive into writing, or I don't know how the things that people are writing or how writers have changed since COVID?
That's a good question. I don't know if things have changed. I mean, the one that springs to my mind is like people write about COVID a lot, and that's been very interesting and is like a good example of something where, there's this having kind of like a vibrant free press that's like got a bunch of interesting people writing about it. A lot of the best sources for knowing what the heck is going on, I think, have been on Substack throughout kind of that whole thing. I don't know if it changes things that much, to be honest, other than kind of like the general topics of the world that people are covering shifts and changes.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. Definitely a lot more writing about COVID, but interesting to see, right? How, I guess maybe this is something I'm curious about, but if, I guess there's kind of the great resignation and, unfortunately it's people getting laid off. And then, I guess I wonder if people are saying, well, now that I don't know, I'm not at this publication anymore, maybe I kind of go it on my own and, try to do something that I have control and I have kind of the autonomy to write about the things that I want to write about. And it seems like a great opportunity, obviously a bit of a perilous situation at times, but sometimes those kind of crisis moments lead to reinvention and kind of creation for yourself.
Yeah, I think there is sort of an underlying trend there. And one thing that's interesting about Substack and about this shift in general is like, yeah, in some cases it's, people that worked at a publication and now they're like, maybe this is a better way to do the work I believe in, or this is more exciting in some way. There's also a lot of folks who succeed on Substack who weren't professional writers before, right? There's folks in industry or folks who just have something to say, have something to give the world as writers, as culture makers. And there just didn't really exist an economic model to do that before, especially to make it kind of like a full-time focus or like a primary focus. And I think that's maybe equally or more exciting, this idea that people who didn't have a path to become a writer before, but had something to give the world now can do that. And you'll see that across a lot of things, I think.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? I think as we see kind of this shift towards the creator economy where, everyone can be a creator, it's no longer, a couple of companies that are, say, creating the majority of the content that you see today, but every individual, right, with a phone or with a computer, you can easily create content that you might not have thought about creating before. And I guess I'm curious maybe of stories or folks you've seen that have really done a great job in this, of where maybe, they weren't, professional writers before, but they found kind of a niche for themselves and they've kind of developed a voice and been able to find followers. And I guess I'm curious, how you've seen writers do this successfully. I think, right, many of us would, love to be, more of a writer or, disseminate the thoughts we have, but many times kind of maybe have that mental block, or should I say writer's block, and kind of making that step and moving forward and trying to build out an audience, which, sounds a little scary at first.
Yeah. And something that's sort of counterintuitive is when people ask, how should I get started on Substack? Like, isn't it hard to get people to pay for the thing? It turns out the hard part is actually not getting people to pay. The hard part is getting people to read in the first place, getting people, making something that's valuable enough that people want to spend their time on it. And our advice to people who want to do it is always just like, just go, just do it, just to like start. And it's going to take a minute to kind of like find your pace and find the thing and talk to people, but just get writing. Don't worry about charging if you're starting from a standstill, like just start making the thing. And that's actually a good way to kind of like a good on-ramp for folks who are thinking about this kind of thing. It's not like, well, first of all, quit your job and then figure out what you're going to write about on Substack. It's more like, hey, if you can start to build an audience that deeply values what you're doing, that's actually going to be valuable no matter what. Even if you don't decide to do this, it's sort of like a valuable thing to have. This is an audience that, you own your list and you can do this stuff with. A couple people that leap to mind as interesting examples of people that weren't strictly speaking journalists before going to Substack. One is Heather Cox Richardson, who's a history professor, and she's an author. She's written books, but wasn't like at a publication or something, writes Letters from an American on Substack, which is one of the most successful Substacks, and has just been like a tremendous force in kind of like the political discourse. I think she interviewed the president a couple weeks ago, and it's something that like wouldn't obviously have existed without the Substack model. Another one that kind of leaps to my mind is Lenny Rachitsky, who was a product manager at Airbnb. Is, not a journalist, not a writer. Obviously to be a good product manager, you want to be able to be a clear communicator, but started on Substack. And I think within a few months, he tweeted that he was making more on Substack than he was as a product manager at Airbnb, and has been obviously growing and going on to great success since then. And that's someone who, that's something, if not for Substack, it's not would he have gone to a different thing? It's like, you'd probably be at Airbnb or at some company. There's sort of like something that he has to give the world that's valuable that this model helps unlock and make real, which is the sort of exciting piece of it.
Yeah, so many gems there. I mean, I love, right, this idea of, with like Heather, thinking about different kind of modalities towards writing and how kind of Substack helps enable people to have, a very different kind of voice or touch that they wouldn't be able to do elsewhere, in a normal publication. And, having an interview with the president recently is such a cool, I guess maybe not cherry, but like a new page for just the new exciting accolade. And then thinking about Lenny, I love his newsletter and have been reading it a bunch, as a product manager trying to grow. And, it was really interesting because there wasn't really that many places to go to learn about being a product manager, to think about how you grow in your career. And it's been so exciting, reading his newsletter along my career journey and just kind of getting the advice or coaching that you need but couldn't find anywhere else.
Yes, it's super valuable, right? Because you want to know that stuff, but there's this problem where like product managers who are really good and know, like, who are the ones you'd want to like learn this from, have very high market value. They like often are working as product managers for this exact reason. And so there's kind of like, there's a lot of value to unlock there, but it's not something that there was like an obvious way to do that before.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not like, oh, I should go write about product management for my local newspaper. Like that wouldn't have made sense.
Definitely. And I really like the comment you kind of made about thinking about how to get started. And so much of it is actually just doing it and getting, feedback. It's kind of how, you might think about making a startup or when you're testing out a product of, just kind of start doing it and you'll find that it kind of flows. And over time, right, you'll get the feedback to refine the story you want to tell, the ideas that you have, and see how it resonates with people to, slowly start kind of, growing that following, or even just like finding the fulfillment that you're looking for in that practice.
Totally.
Awesome. Is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about?
Yes. We have an iPhone app now. You should get it. It's very good. It's changing the nature of being a reader on Substack. I mean, the way that I think about this is, Substack is about creating this alternate universe on the internet with different laws of physics, right? Instead of the laws that come from the attention economy where you kind of need to like fight for attention at all costs. As a writer, you get to do the work you believe in, make something that you deeply value, that your audience deeply values, connect with them directly. And then as a reader, the pitch is kind of like take back your mind, right? Choose to spend your time with people who you trust and who are doing work that you think is going to make your life better and richer, not just things that are kind of like going to get you to click on them. And, support the stuff that you believe in. And the app is kind of like a place where you can go to do that. It's a place where you can go that's like, hey, this is the place where I connect with the culture that I care about. And I think that's like a new and exciting thing for both readers and writers.
Yeah, it's really exciting to, right, again, move away from this model of the attention economy and have, for example, when you go in, right, you're in this kind of focused inbox and, it's like with newsletters or, it's like how I wish my email was, where everything I see is super exciting and, things I want to click into. And rather than, being overloaded with content or, TikTok videos, right, you have this focused kind of attention on content that's actually really valuable and has taken a lot of folks, a lot of time and mind power to create. And so, right, really kind of shifting this kind of focus from, these 30-second clips, but to something that's maybe a little bit longer form, or even if it is short form, right, you're getting these kind of nuggets and gems on a regular basis all in one place.
Yeah, the metric is value instead of time, which makes a world of difference.
Yeah, it's a really nice, kind of KPI to anchor on rather than time, right? When you think about how many platforms are thinking about how they're being successful, but, focusing on something, seems, again, more obvious than you would think, but it's definitely a kind of a paradigmatic shift in how you think about, what the app is trying to create and trying to achieve.
Totally.
And I guess around kind of the connecting directly, I'm curious, how you've kind of seen this enriching kind of creators' lives or even just the content that subscribers are getting.
One of the things that's most heartening to me is hearing from writers, hearing from people that are doing this, that this has kind of changed their life or changed their work in some way, right? Everything from like, I'm actually able to make this my focus in a way that I have always dreamed of, or even just like, this lets me do the work that I believe in. This is the thing that I've always thought was the kind of thing I wanted to be able to do. I've always thought there would be people out there who would value it and it would be creating something that mattered. But I was never able to find the place where I could do that work and make money from it, or even just have this direct connection with the audience. I think this is the key thing about Substack, is it's not a different way to make money doing the same thing. It's a new system where the kind of thing you can do and the kind of thing that succeeds is different and better. You can do a kind of work that is different and better than the kind of work that you could do in other places. And for people who are the most interesting, the most talented, the most, that's like a powerful pull, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of like you mentioned with Lenny, right? Being a product manager in the past and then, shifting more of his attention to his newsletter. And, it's not something you really saw before, at least in the product management space as much. And, if there wasn't something like Substack, right, he, like you said, might just continue to be a product manager. And for many people, right, they might kind of stay in the industry or the function that they're in and not have access, right, to these tools or even just this kind of way of thinking. And, it's so rich in enabling folks like myself, for example, to almost like feel like you're getting a mentor through this newsletter that, might be really hard to find elsewhere. And so it's really exciting, right, to see this shift in opportunity for folks, shift in like the mindset that people have about, what they can do and what they can achieve, and even just like the information that they want to kind of disseminate out there.
100%.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I think we did. I think it was really great. It was lovely to hear, right? I think the perspective on value, on, thinking about, how this is enabling creators, enabling consumers, right, to get, in kind of new kind of content that's really resonates with them. So no, I think we hit on all the themes. And so
it's an exciting place to work too. I would be remiss if I did not say.
I can imagine. It seems, remember I was talking to, I think, a friend that works at Substack, and they were telling me about like the office and having just bookshelves everywhere and people kind of giving out books. And again, this focus, which makes a lot of sense on reading, but it's an interesting culture. So actually, maybe I'd love to hear a little bit about Substack's culture.
Yeah. What is there about Substack's culture? I think the biggest point is the people that work here care about this thing that we're doing. It's not just like a cool business opportunity, although we really think that it is that. We think we're doing something that matters for the world. And so it's kind of nice working with a set of talented, dedicated people that are kind of like in it for the right reason and in it to make something great. That's kind of like the biggest thing that I would say. We have a bunch of things that we're like often repeating here. One of my favorite is that our rate of learning is one of the most important determinants of our success. So the rate at which we can, take a real stab at something, get contact with reality, and then take the lesson from that is when you're building something genuinely new like we are at Substack, that actually ends up paying compound interest over time. The rate at which you can do that ends up kind of swamping, other things that determines whether you succeed. And that has a lot of like implications for how we work, right? It means that we want to ship things quickly. It means that we want to be like constantly talking to the users who are using it, getting the data, like looking at the things, getting this real world feedback from the things we're doing. Yeah, it's an exciting place to be.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a wonderful culture. Again, like we kind of mentioned in the past, right? That focus on bringing value and bringing opportunity and people really being passionate and excited about, right, this kind of ubiquity and access to, incredible newsletters and incredible things to read. And right, that focus on learning and learning fast. And right, along the way, you might do some things that don't work as well, but the quicker you do them, the faster you're going to learn, and that you can continue to create new innovative things. So, I mean, it sounds like an incredible place to work. Well, I think that kind of brings us to our final question. So I'm really excited to hear, what is your boldest, most unique prediction that folks might feel is a moonshot that you believe, in your heart of hearts will happen in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, first of all, everyone will have a Substack, obviously. That will be a big and important shift. This is kind of like unrelated to Substack. I think the AI stuff that's going on is going to change things a lot. I don't know if we'll have a rogue super intelligence cause a singularity, but I would be not surprised if people are underestimating how weird things might get in the next 5 to 10 years based on the new and rapid progress in AI.
Yeah, no, I think that's fascinating. I was reading recently, I think Snap acquired a French company that allows you to do some tasks with your mind. It's like a headband. And so, through machine learning, right, they've kind of figured out, I guess, some certain gestures or brainwaves that mean certain, intentions. So it's interesting to think about, how technology and AI and machine learning are kind of shaping the future and maybe extending, say, I guess, our brains in this way. But it is really, really cool. I guess I'm curious, like, what are some of the, I don't know, zany things maybe you dream about that could be happening, with this kind of revolution and continued innovation in AI?
I don't want to speculate.
No worries. Well, I mean, I think that's super exciting. And so I think we're all looking forward to seeing what happens in the next 5 to 10 years. Chris, this was wonderful. It was really great chatting with you. And I'm super excited for everyone to hear our wonderful chat.
Thanks. Great talking to you. Great to meet you.